The sky above Ashenfell burned red as the Zarkothi warships descended through the atmosphere like falling stars of death. Maria clutched her 6-month-old daughter against her chest, running through streets filled with screaming colonists and the thunderous explosions of orbital bombardment. The peaceful farming world had no military defenses worth mentioning, just a small security force meant to handle local disputes. Against an empire that had conquered 40 worlds in 5 years, they were nothing. "Everyone to the shelters!" someone shouted, but Maria knew the shelters would not save them. She had seen the reports from other worlds. The Zarkothi did not take prisoners. They wanted the land, not the people. She burst through the door of her small home on the colony's edge, her lungs burning from smoke and fear. Her husband, Tom, had left 3 days ago with the security force to investigate strange readings at the system's edge. He was not coming back. Maria knew this with terrible certainty as she heard the high-pitched whine of Zarkothi ground forces beginning their sweep through the settlement. Her home had a reinforced cellar, built by the previous owner who had survived the frontier wars. Maria kissed her daughter's forehead, tears streaming down her face as she wrapped the baby in thermal blankets. She placed her in a small alcove in the cellar wall, surrounded by emergency supplies and a water recycler that would last for weeks. "Mommy loves you, Lily," Maria whispered. "Someone will come. Someone will find you. Be strong, my little ember." The baby gurgled, reaching for her mother's face with tiny fingers. Maria forced herself to step back. She sealed the alcove with a panel that would keep the baby's heat signature hidden from basic scans. Then she grabbed an old rifle from the wall and went upstairs to buy her daughter time. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes. Maria managed to take down one Zarkothi soldier before their weapons cut through her home like it was made of paper. The house collapsed in flames, burning with everything else in the settlement. By dawn, the Zarkothi fleet suddenly broke orbit and jumped away. Their sensors had detected the approaching human military response from the core worlds, 3 heavy cruisers that would arrive in 6 hours. The reptilian invaders followed their doctrine: strike fast, kill fast, and retreat before superior forces arrived. Ashenfell was just another message, another warning of Zarkothi power. The ruins smoked for 2 days. In the sealed cellar beneath tons of rubble and ash, baby Lily cried. She cried for her mother, who would not come. She cried for food as emergency supplies slowly fed her through automated systems. She cried into the darkness, alone in a tomb of stone and fire. 50 kilometers away, on a mountain that had no name in human records, something ancient stirred. Vraxel the Eternal had lived on this world for 300 years, long before humans had arrived to build their farms and schools. He had chosen this remote planet specifically because intelligent life did not visit here. He wanted silence, wanted distance from the endless cycles of war that plagued the younger races. The Draconian was old even by the standards of his people. His scales were deep bronze, marked with scars from battles fought when humans still lived in caves on their distant homeworld. His kind had once ruled a vast empire spanning thousands of systems, but they had grown tired. Tired of fighting, tired of politics, tired of watching species destroy themselves. One by one, the Draconians had withdrawn from galactic affairs, seeking isolated worlds where they could exist in peace. Vraxel had not spoken to another living being in decades. He did not care about the war between humans and Zarkothi. Empires rose and fell like waves on an ocean. Why should he care about one more species, learning one more painful lesson? But the crying would not stop. For 2 days and nights, it echoed in his mind. His species had senses beyond the normal 5, the ability to feel disturbances in life itself. Somewhere in the ruins of a human settlement, someone very small was calling out to the universe. The cry was pure, innocent, untouched by hatred or rage. It was simply a baby wanting to live. On the 3rd morning, Vraxel spread his massive wings, each one 30 meters from tip to tip. He had told himself he would never care again. He had promised himself he was done with the younger races and their problems. But he could not ignore that cry. The ancient dragon launched himself into the sky and turned toward the ruins. Vraxel circled above the ruins, his golden eyes scanning the destruction below. The entire settlement was gone, reduced to blackened foundations and twisted metal. Bodies lay scattered among the debris, already being reclaimed by the planet's scavengers. The dragon felt nothing for them. Death was a constant companion of all mortal species. He had seen billions die across his long lifetime. But the crying continued, faint but persistent, pulling at something deep inside him that he thought had died centuries ago. He landed in what had once been the residential sector, his massive weight crushing rubble beneath his clawed feet. Each foot was larger than a human vehicle. His body stretched 20 meters from snout to tail, covered in scales that could withstand starship weapons. The Zarkothi would have fled in terror if they had known a draconian lived on this world. Vraxel closed his eyes and focused his senses. There, beneath a collapsed house, deep underground, a tiny heartbeat flickered like a candle in a storm. He began to dig, his claws carefully moving aside tons of debris. For a creature who could tear through starship hulls, this required immense control and patience. It took 3 hours to reach the cellar. When he finally pulled away the last section of collapsed flooring, he found a reinforced room mostly intact. And there, in a sealed alcove, wrapped in blankets, was the source of the crying. The baby was silent now, too weak to make noise. Her lips were cracked, her skin pale. The emergency water system had failed the previous night. She had perhaps hours left to live. Vraxel stared at the tiny creature. He could walk away. He should walk away. This was not his concern. The baby species meant nothing to him. In 100 years, even if she lived, she would be dust while he continued on through the centuries. The baby's eyes opened. They were blue, the color of Earth's skies according to human databases he had studied. She looked directly at him without fear, without understanding what he was. Her small hand reached out toward his massive head, making a soft, cooing sound. Something inside Vraxel broke. Or perhaps something ancient and sleeping finally woke up. He carefully extended one claw, and the baby's entire hand wrapped around just the tip of it. Her grip was impossibly weak, yet somehow it felt like the strongest chain ever forged. "What am I doing?" Vraxel muttered in his own language, a series of deep rumbles that made the ground vibrate. But even as he questioned himself, he was already acting. He carefully scooped the baby up, cradling her against his chest with a gentleness that would have shocked any who knew his reputation as a warrior. The dragon's knowledge was vast. He had studied thousands of species across millions of years. Human biology was relatively simple. The baby needed water, nutrients, warmth, and care. He had none of these things prepared, but he had something better. Technology from a civilization that had mastered science when humanity's ancestors were still living in trees. Vraxel carried the baby to his mountain sanctuary, flying slowly to avoid jarring her fragile body. His home was a cave system he had expanded and modified, filled with equipment salvaged from ancient draconian outposts across the galaxy. In one chamber, he had a medical facility that could heal injuries no human doctor could treat. He placed the baby in a stasis field that would stabilize her condition, then began synthesizing what she needed. Infant formula created from molecular assemblers, medical nanites to repair her dehydration damage, a temperature-controlled sleeping chamber sized for something so impossibly small. For 3 days, Vraxel worked without rest, something he had not done in a century. He fed the baby carefully, cleaned her, monitored her vital signs. Human infants were remarkably fragile compared to most species he knew. Everything had to be precise. On the 4th day, the baby smiled at him. It was probably just gas, as human medical texts suggested. But Vraxel found himself making a rumbling sound deep in his chest, something he had not done since his own younglings had died in a war 3,000 years ago. He was purring. "You need a name," he said in human standard language, his voice like rolling thunder. "Your species has a tradition of naming based on circumstances. You rose from ashes. You are small but bright. I will call you Ember." The baby made a happy gurgling sound, reaching for his snout again. This time, Vraxel lowered his massive head and let her tiny hands touch his scales. They were warm, warmer than he expected. He realized with sudden clarity that he had made a choice. This was no longer about saving one life. He had taken responsibility for this child. She was his now, and he would raise her. The ancient dragon who had sworn never to care again found himself caring more than he had in millennia. 7 years passed like water flowing through Vraxel's ancient fingers. Ember sat cross-legged on a flat stone at the edge of a cliff, her eyes closed in meditation, as her guardian had taught her. The wind whipped her dark hair around her face, but she remained perfectly still. Below them, the ruins of the old settlement had been slowly reclaimed by nature, green plants growing through the ash. "Focus!" Vraxel's deep voice rumbled behind her. "Feel the air currents. Predict where the wind will shift before it happens." Ember's brow furrowed in concentration. At 7 years old, she was small for a human child, but her mind was sharp beyond her years. Growing up with an ancient dragon as her only teacher had given her an education no human university could match. She spoke 3 languages fluently: Human Standard, the rumbling draconian tongue, and the mathematical language of pure logic that Vraxel's people use for science. "There!" she said suddenly, pointing left. 3 seconds later, the wind shifted exactly as she predicted. Vraxel made his purring sound of approval. "Good. You are learning to see patterns. This skill will serve you better than any weapon." They returned to the cave sanctuary that had become their home. Vraxel had transformed the ancient stone chambers into something between a library and a laboratory. Holographic displays showed star maps of the galaxy. Shelves carved into rock held data crystals containing the accumulated knowledge of draconian civilization. In one corner sat Ember's small living space, decorated with drawings she had made and a collection of interesting rocks she found on their flights together. "Today we study history," Vraxel announced, activating a holographic display. Images of different alien species appeared in the air, rotating slowly. "Tell me what you know about the Zarkathi." Ember's expression darkened slightly. She knew the Zarkathi had destroyed her birth world, though she barely remembered anything from before Vraxel found her. Sometimes she had dreams of a woman's face and a soft voice singing, but they were fading with each year. "The Zarkathi Empire spans 42 conquered worlds," Ember recited from memory. "They are a reptilian species that believes in expansion through military force. They take resources and leave destruction. They kill my parents." "Yes," Vraxel said quietly. "But do you know why they do this?" Ember shook her head. "Fear," the dragon explained. "Their home world was invaded twice in their early history. They nearly went extinct. Now they believe the only safety is to conquer others before being conquered. It does not excuse their actions, but understanding your enemy's motivation is the first step toward defeating them." "I want to fight them," Ember said, her young voice filled with determination. "When I am older, I want to make them pay for what they did." Vraxel was silent for a long moment. His golden eyes studied the child he had raised. "Revenge is a poison, little Ember. I have lived long enough to see revenge destroy more lives than it ever saved. If you fight, fight for justice and protection, not for hatred." "But they deserve to be punished," Ember insisted. "Perhaps," Vraxel agreed. "But who decides what punishment is deserved? Who judges the judges? These are questions my people struggle with for thousands of years. We had the power to reshape galaxies, yet we can never answer these simple questions." He lowered his massive head to her level. "I did not save you so you could become another weapon of war. I saved you because you deserve to live." Ember was quiet, processing his words. She climbed onto his head, a familiar perch where she often sat when thinking. "Then why do you teach me to fight? Why show me combat techniques and strategy?" "Because the galaxy is dangerous," Vraxel replied. "Knowing how to fight and choosing to fight are different things. I teach you so you have choices. But I also teach you philosophy, art, and compassion. A warrior without wisdom is just a killer." That afternoon, they flew together through mountain ranges that no human had ever explored. Ember rode on Vraxel's back, secured by a harness she had helped design. The dragon's flight was smooth and powerful, his wings catching thermal currents with practiced ease. "Look down there," Vraxel said, diving toward a valley. A herd of native animals grazed peacefully, 6-legged creatures with iridescent fur. "They are beautiful," Ember breathed. "They are also delicious," Vraxel said with what might have been amusement. We do not hunt them because we do not need to. They harm no one, so we leave them in peace. Power without restraint is tyranny. Remember this lesson always. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, they returned home. 10 more years had shaped Ember into something the galaxy had never seen before. At 17, she stood on the same cliff where she had once meditated as a child. But now she wore armor crafted from Vraxel's own shed scales. The bronze plates fitted perfectly to her body, lighter than any human metal, yet stronger than starship hull plating. At her side hung weapons powered by draconian technology, elegant tools of precision rather than crude instruments of destruction. She was practicing combat forms when the distress signal came through. Vraxel had taught her to monitor human communication channels, keeping watch over her species from their hidden sanctuary. The message crackled with static and fear. This is Colony Perseus 7. We are under attack. Zarkathi forces have breached our defenses, requesting immediate assistance. Casualties are, oh God, they're in the residential sector. Anyone receiving this, please. The signal cut off abruptly. Ember's hand tightened on her weapon. We have to go. Now! Vraxel, who had been reading an ancient text in the cave entrance, looked up at his adopted daughter. Ember, we discussed this. Revealing ourselves would have consequences we cannot predict. People are dying right now, Ember said, her voice steady but intense. You taught me that power without action is worthless. You saved me from ashes. Let me save others from the same fate. The dragon studied her for a long moment. She had grown into a remarkable human, stronger and faster than any normal person thanks to draconian training methods. Her mind was sharp, her tactical thinking beyond military commanders twice her age. But more than that, she had developed a sense of justice tempered with wisdom. She was ready, even if he was not ready to let her go. Very well, Vraxel said, rising to his full height. But we do this together, and we do this my way. No unnecessary killing. We disable, we protect, we stop the attack. We are not executioners. Agreed, Ember said, already running toward his back. She mounted the harness she had upgraded over the years, now a sophisticated piece of equipment that let her fight even while he flew. They launched into the sky, and Vraxel opened a jump portal using technology that humanity had not yet discovered. Space folded around them, and in seconds they crossed distances that would take human ships days to travel. Perseus, 7 appeared before them, a small farming colony much like Ashenfell had been. Smoke rose from multiple settlements. 3 Zarkathi warships hung in orbit, smaller vessels descending to the surface. On the ground, Emmer could see the distinctive reptilian soldiers moving through streets, their weapons cutting down fleeing colonists. The civilians first, Vraxel said. I will handle the ships. You protect the people on the ground. Understood, Ember replied, her heart pounding with anticipation and purpose. Vraxel dove through the atmosphere like a falling meteor. The Zarkathi ships immediately detected him, their sensors screaming warnings about an unknown massive contact. Weapon systems locked on, but before they could fire, the ancient dragon released a pulse of electromagnetic energy that shut down their targeting computers without destroying the ships. Meanwhile, Ember leaped from Vraxel's back while still 50 meters above the ground, using her armor's gravity dampeners to land smoothly in the middle of the colony's main square. A group of Zarkathi soldiers had cornered a dozen human civilians against a building, preparing to execute them. Stop! Ember's voice rang out, amplified by her helmet systems. The Zarkathi turned, their reptilian faces showing confusion and then amusement. A single human girl against 6 armed soldiers? They raised their weapons. Ember moved. Her speed was beyond human normal. Every muscle trained to peak efficiency through draconian methods. She crossed the distance before they could fire, her weapon emitting precise energy bursts that disabled their armor systems without killing them. In 12 seconds, all 6 soldiers were on the ground, unconscious and disarmed. The human civilians stared at her in shock. Get to the emergency shelters, Ember commanded. Now, move! Above them, Vraxel roared, a sound that shook buildings and made every Zarkathi on the planet freeze in primal terror. The dragon descended into view, his massive form blotting out the sun. The sight was beyond anything the Zarkathi or the human colonists had ever imagined. Dragons were myths, legends, stories told to children. But this legend was real, and it had come to protect humanity. Zarkathi forces, Vraxel's voice boomed across all communication channels. You will cease your attack immediately. Withdraw to your ships. You have 1 minute to comply. The Galactic Council chamber was unlike anything Ember had ever seen, even in all the archives Vraxel had shown her. Representatives from 40 different species sat in a massive circular room, each in their own environmental pod designed for their specific needs. The air hummed with translation devices working in dozens of languages simultaneously. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ focused on the center platform where Ember and Vraxel stood. 3 months had passed since Perseus, 7. Word of their intervention had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A human girl riding an ancient dragon, saving colonies from Zarkathi attacks. Some call them heroes. Others call them threats. The Zarkathi Empire demanded Vraxel's arrest for war crimes, claiming he had no right to interfere in their territorial expansion. The council speaker, a tall insectoid being named Thrix, activated the central display. Ember of humanity and Vraxel the eternal of the draconian species, you stand before this council to answer for your actions. The laws of galactic coexistence are clear. Elder species shall not interfere with the development of younger races. Ember stepped forward, removing her helmet so they could see her face. At 17, she looked young and vulnerable compared to the ancient beings surrounding her, but her voice was steady and clear. I am not here to apologize, she began. 17 years ago, the Zarkathi destroyed my world. They killed my parents and left me to die in the ashes. One person saved me. Not because he had to, not because any law demanded it, but because he chose to care. He raised me, taught me, and showed me that power should be used to protect, not to conquer. Murmurs rippled through the council. The Zarkathi representative, a scarred military commander named Vex, hissed angrily, Your story changes nothing. The dragon violated ancient treaties. He has disrupted the natural order. Natural order? Ember's eyes flashed. You mean the order where the strong destroy the weak? Where empires expand by burning colonies? Where innocent people die because no one with power chooses to stop it? She turned to address the entire council. My father taught me that having power means having responsibility, not the responsibility to rule, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Vraxel spoke for the first time, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. I have lived for thousands of years. I have watched empires rise on ideals of honor and justice, only to become the very monsters they once fought against. My people withdrew from galactic affairs because we grew tired of the cycles of violence. We thought isolation was wisdom. He lowered his massive head, looking at Ember with obvious affection. This child taught me that isolation is not wisdom. It is cowardice dressed in philosophy. The council erupted in debate. Some species supported them. Others demanded punishment. The human representative, Ambassador Chun, stood and raised her hand for silence. The Zarkathi have destroyed 12 human colonies in the past 5 years, Chin said. Each time, we have appealed to this council for intervention. Each time, we were told that territorial disputes must be resolved through diplomatic channels. How many must die while we talk? She gestured to Ember and Vraxel. They saved Perseus, 7. Over 8,000 human lives that would have been lost. I stand with them. One by one, other representatives began to stand. The Valine, a peaceful species that had lost 3 worlds to Zarkathi expansion. The Korthi, whose trade routes had been disrupted by the growing empire. Even some former Zarkathi allies rose, species tired of supporting conquest. Thrix, the speaker, raised his many-limbed appendages for silence. This council faces a choice. We can punish those who acted outside our laws, or we can acknowledge that our laws have failed to protect the innocent. I propose a third option. The chamber fell silent. Let us create something new, Thrix continued. A coalition dedicated not to conquest or territory, but to protection of those who cannot defend themselves. Not an army, but a shield. Not rulers, but guardians. Vraxel's eyes brightened with understanding. You are suggesting what my people once dreamed of but never achieved. A true defensive alliance based on principles rather than power. Yes, Thrick said, and I propose we call it the Coalition of Ash, named for the girl who rose from destruction to become a symbol of hope. The vote was not unanimous, but it passed. The Zarkothi Empire protested and withdrew from the council, but their action isolated them further. Over the following weeks, 17 species joined the coalition, pledging resources and support. In a private moment after the historic session, Ember stood with Vraxel on an observation deck, watching stars drift past. You know what this means, Vraxel said quietly. I am not the last Draconian. Others sleep in hidden sanctuaries across the galaxy, waiting for a reason to return.